So today I'm going to talk to everyone here about what I believe are the three key attributes that make people successful. And the reason I wanted to share that with you is because when I was younger, I was about 12 actually as well, I wish I'd known about some of these attributes that I know today. My name's Ted Nash. I'm the CEO of a company called TapDAC. We've raised about $10 million in venture funding. I've built many companies over my sort of career of about 13 years, and I'm just now 25. The first attribute I want to speak to you about is passion, and I believe everyone must start with a passion. I was 12 when I first started building companies, and I found my passion because actually my grandparents lived in Spain, and I spent a lot of time in Spain growing up. And how I came to find my passion was actually quite a silly story. My neighbor at the time was an 18-year-old who had everything from a petrol scooter to the latest O2 PDA, which was a gadget at the time. It's a very material thing. But at age 12, that's the only thing I could really relate to. So I decided that's what I wanted. And I went, from understanding what he did, which was owning a very successful search engine, aged 18, I wanted to build something not too dissimilar, so I used technology to do that. I started with problems, which is interesting. Alice has just mentioned that I could help solve in terms of fulfilling my own problems and also other people's. That started in the form of an affiliate shopping portal, actually, because at the time, this was before social networking existed, and really before things like Amazon and eBay were as big as they are now. So I tried to build what was basically a site that had everything on it that you could buy, from travel to airplane tickets to bedding, literally everything. It went from strength to strength, and I ended up making some very good money from that at a very, very young age. One of the things I hear young entrepreneurs often come and speak to me about when they ask for a little bit of advice is, I'm not sure if my passion is something that I can monetize. I've always said that I don't believe that's true. I think you can monetize absolutely everything. And the reason being, and the reason why I put windsurfing up there, if you're so passionate about windsurfing as an example, and you learn more and more about it than anyone else or anyone else that's close to you, you start to develop more knowledge than the next person about windsurfing. And what you end up monetizing is the knowledge gap between you and the next person. There is absolutely nothing in the world that you can't monetize. And that's why I believe everyone should really be starting with a passion. The second key attribute I want to speak to you guys about today is purpose. That's incredibly important. And for me, you can have a passion, but it's important that you funnel that passion into a purpose. There are two types of purposes. One is short-term purposes, one is long-term, which otherwise could be a life's purpose. A good example to highlight, or an analogy, could be building a bridge. You have to build that bridge piece by piece. And sure, you might encounter some problems along the way, but if you maintain very persistent towards that, you can end up building something that changes the world, or at least changes two different cultures. And the Golden Gate Bridge is a really, really good example of a massive lifelong purpose that could connect two land masses together in order to help fulfill trade between the peninsula of San Francisco and Marin County. Success is never what people perceive it to be. This is a great diagram I hope some of you have seen before, but if you haven't, you have now. Now, your long-term purpose is probably unlikely to change. It can change, and that's fine. But the long-term purpose, you can see there, the 2 arrows at the end actually finish roughly in the same place. But actually, the short-term purposes in between, they change, and they change quite consistently. And that's absolutely fine. My short-term purposes changed massively. I started out building websites. I then went on to build applications. The reason being, I was trying to solve problems, and I was also trying to help entertain people, inform people, and I felt the best way to do that was through mobile technology. I went from, I suppose you could say, one failure to the next, but I didn't lose hope, and I ended up clocking in about 6 million installs after launching basically some applications that were games and entertaining applications onto the App Store that did very well. And actually, it was at that point that I realized my passion, which was technology, was something that could be monetized, and I could do it for the rest of my life. That led me to not go to university and pursue my passion with a sense of renewed purpose. Things always go wrong. And it's okay to fail. I know people speak about failure a lot in entrepreneurship, but it is very, very important. This picture here is actually me and my co-founder working in our flat in London. About 2 a.m., we built a website called Little Gossip that we launched, and it became one of the fastest growing social networks in the world, and it actually brought the UK educational system into disrepute, as was reported by BBC, Telegraph, and the Daily Mail. The reason being, I started this with my co-founder because at school, we weren't the most sociable people in terms of always going to the parties, always spending time with friends and understanding what happened the night before or the days before. So we built a platform that would allow our friends to post about what happened the night before, anonymously. What started out as a really fun endeavor turned into something that completely spiraled out of control. It had 33,000 pieces of gossip submitted every single hour, and that was myself and one of my co-founders, Dom, trying to manually go through that gossip to understand what was good sentiment, what was bad sentiment. Needless to say, it didn't end too gracefully. We ended up shutting it down 2 weeks after we built it, and that wasn't before we had appeared on BBC Panorama and all these other flagship shows. But it just shows that, again, my purpose was to build to solve my own problems and my friends' problems, and as a short-term purpose, that changed massively. But Winston Churchill once said, and a quote I really, really love from him, which is, "Success is going from failure to failure with no real loss of enthusiasm." And for me, having gone through my fair share of failures, I can really relate to this quote. It would have been very, very easy to give up on a number of different ventures that I have started throughout my life, but being persistent in the pursuit of my passion meant that we could move from one failure to the next in order to try and hit a success. We built a number of different applications, as I said, that ended up going on to be financially really quite successful for us, and they did have an impact on the people that downloaded them and played them. They were entertained, they were informed, and in some instances, they were educated. But what became really interesting and what we learned was that when we first started applications, before we built Little Gossip, there was only 30,000 applications on the store. Fast forward 4 or 5 years later, there's 1.4 million applications on the store. So we pushed out some new applications that didn't do particularly well. It wasn't because we became any less better engineers or we were building worse applications. It was simply because the markets had changed. And that persistence led us to our latest venture, TapDAC, which I talk about. My life purpose, for me, is creating value for my customers, my team, and also my family. And how I do that used to be through building applications that entertain, educate, and inform. Now, we've moved to build an infrastructure that allows developers to do the same thing. So they use our platform, TapDAC, to deploy their creativity, which does entertain, inform, and educate other people. So whilst my life's purpose has still very much remained the same, the short-term purposes that enable me to get there have changed, and that's okay. The reason why I think those 3 key attributes are so important is because in business, one of the most important things is relationships, and they have been important your whole life. From when you were born up until the day you start your first company, or you move on to do your first venture. There's another great quote, which is, "You are the average of your 5 closest friends," and that is, for me, been very, very true throughout my career as well. Teamwork is what makes the dream work, and even though people like myself do appear as, say, a public-facing figure for my company, I have a team, my co-founder that you saw in one of the pictures there as well, that I would absolutely be nowhere near where I am today without having a team behind me. And the reason why that's important, if I hadn't have been passionate, if I hadn't have been purposeful, and if I hadn't have been persistent, it's very hard to attract people with similar qualities to you. And if you want to succeed, those are the type of people in any walk of life that you want to attract to help you to achieve your vision as well. And finally, I wanted to leave you with a great picture from Elon Musk and SpaceX, which is one of their Falcon X rockets. He is someone who is a great example. If you haven't, I'm sure everyone has now heard of Elon Musk and seen his recent PR I suppose, his recent videos and his recent missions. But if you haven't, I would very much urge you guys to check back 10, 15, 20 years and see how much his individual purposes or his short-term purposes have changed. Certainly his long-term and lifetime purpose back when he was younger was not to deploy human to Mars. Now it is, and it's incredibly inspiring, and it's probably why he's such a good leader. But I wanted to leave you this image because I think it's a stark reminder that if you are persistently passionate towards your purpose, it becomes almost impossible to fail at whatever you put your mind to. So thank you very much for having me.